When we are faced with the enormity of Tao, how do we move within it? By connecting to glimmering points. Okay, so today is day 18 of Moon 1. This is still following the Lunar Tao, so by Den Mingdao. So day by day, so 17 days ago was Chinese New Year. Day 18 is the celebration of the star gods, and the main three, which are representing happiness, prosperity, and longevity. So Taoism is a polytheistic, many gods, etc., following tradition. So today is a lot to do with following the seasons and living with the seasons, which is something I will be talking a bit more about from the dietary side of things as well. But yes, before any of that, my name is Ollie. If you haven't watched any of this before, I am a Eastern Physiotherapies practitioner working in the south of England, in Southsea. And this is Red Sun Horizons. So, going straight in. So, starting with that, obviously. So, when we are faced with the enormity of Tao, how do we move within it? By connecting to the glimmering points. So this is talking about, obviously, how people used to navigate by the stars, but also like with what we see as astronomy in astrology, in the West, from the Greek origins, everything from Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, etc., through to etc. The Chinese have their own version of astrology, astronomy, etc. So we are going to cover a little bit of that. So looking at, obviously, we are looking at moon cycles with the lunar Tao, so we're looking at day by day. So in Chinese astrology and astronomy, there are obviously different names for each full moon. So much like we have... also, actually, you get ones that come from Native America, and you get ones that come from more the Eastern, and you'll find some moons have different names, that kind of thing. So like January we had Wolf Moon, and then February we had Snow Moon, because obviously it's the most likely time for snow. This is now March. We've just had the Worm Moon, which is obviously where you start seeing worm castings again. This is where the worms are far more active. They're coming up to the top to all of that, all those dead leaves that fell in the autumn and are breaking down. So the worms are coming up and using that mulch as food. And then all of the worm castings contain loads of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the main things that help feed plants. So nitrogen obviously for leaves, potassium, phosphorus for roots and flowers. And then potassium is kind of the bonding agent that holds the cells of the plant together. As a simplification, but that's as much as I know. So and then beyond that, then obviously you've got things like the grass moon will be the next one when we start seeing grasses come out. Then you've got the flower moon, which would be May, and then you've got then you're going through to like strawberry moon, etc., which is a time where fruit is supposed to be more abundant. I think September is where you've got harvest moon. No, it's not. That's hunter's moon. August is harvest moon, when we would harvest in crops most abundantly. September is hunter's moon, and going forth, that kind of thing. So in the Chinese one, you have things like there's lotus moon and peach moon and all this kind of stuff, which that will come up, and on the days, obviously, when those come up, that will be the day to discuss those. Okay, so going to the star gods. So yes, the three stars, so happiness, prosperity, and longevity. There are a number of gods associated with the stars, and this day celebrates all of them as a group. The most prominent of these gods are the three stars. They are commonly seen in homes, businesses, and temples. Okay, so the star of happiness is the planet Jupiter. The star of prosperity is Mizar in Ursa Major. And the star of longevity is called Canopus, which is the South Pole star in Chinese astronomy. Okay, so there's gods for everything, much like within some of the Hindu, Indian followings. Okay, so using stars as reference points to help us achieve practical effects In both cases, the stars that are in the night sky stimulate our imaginations. What we see in nature inspires us and helps us direct our thoughts. Yeah. So obviously inspiration from the stars obviously has been a thing. As I said earlier, I do work in the south of England, in Southsea, which is in Portsmouth, and Portsmouth is still to this day the most densely populated city in the whole of the UK. We are kind of in many places living on top of each other, metaphorically and physically. The traffic is ridiculous, and the street lights and everything else, so we can very rarely actually see stars, and even then we're just seeing the major ones, the brightest ones, which is my biggest gripe of living in this city. Yes, so it's kind of been removed from the heavens in that way for his technocratic, digital, over-the-top nightmare. But there's lots of benefits, and I'm staying here because obviously I feel that's where I should be, and that's where I need to be placing my efforts and helping. Okay, so last bit I'll read from this book is: living in harmony with nature means integrating our decisions with grand movements and cycles. So working with the seasons is the thing. We just have to make the right decision. We just have to make the right distinctions and align ourselves with nature in a practical rather than fanciful way. Yes, so fanciful is nice and everything else, but practical is something that is diet. This is what I really want to approach on today. So looking at diet from a TCM perspective, from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, eating, not just eating locally, because I mean, especially where I live here, where do I eat locally? There are some there's some allotments around, but you can't buy from them. So how locally are you eating when you eat locally? There are no farms. Portsmouth is an island, and then next along that you've got Hayling Island, where I was born. So you've got two little islands which are only connected by bridges to the mainland of England. There are farms on Hayling, and there are farm shops, so you can eat locally there, but when you come into Portsmouth Southsea, there is nothing. So, but you can still eat as locally as you can get, and eat seasonally is really what we're going to cover here. So since we had the introduction of refrigerators and freezers, especially fridges, and we started importing fruits and all this kind of stuff from other countries, we've really had the option of not having to live with the seasons. So it's a thing that kind of doesn't really sink in until you see until you try it and then see the benefits of it, of going back to living with the seasons. So currently we're still in winter. There is no fruit on the trees. Should we be eating fruit? No. You know, especially, I mean, now we're coming into spring. Like, obviously we are now in spring as far as China is concerned, but we haven't had the spring equinox, etc., that kind of stuff. But we are starting to physically see some sunlight, if the government starts blacking it out with all the shitty stuff they're spraying in the sky. But we're getting glimpses of spring. So if you are living in a cold, damp environment, should you then be putting cold, damp food inside your body, which is fruit? Bananas are a big one, a really big protagonist of this. So the amount of people that they're overweight, they have a lot of cellulite, and it kind of hangs off them. They have a lot of water weight. You'll generally find these are people, I don't understand why I'm gaining weight. I eat loads of fruit. You're eating loads of sugar. You're spiking insulin all the time. And you're putting very damp foods inside your body when you've already got loads of damp outside your body. If you were putting foods inside your body that would be relative to how we would have been living in your climate. So right now we would still be living off, we'd be fasting a lot, but we would be eating a lot of more very high nutrient. So we'd be like biltong, so what we call biltong nowadays. So we'd be eating a lot of like dehydrated meats, salted things, preserved things, preserved. So I mean, I've still got pumpkins from like last year. If you in the right conditions, get a dustbin, bury that in the ground, fill that with straw. That makes like a very quick, easy equivalent of a root cellar. Or you can just have it in a place, if you live somewhere that isn't very damp, keep it in a, pumpkins will still be alive and lasting now off of the vine, obviously. And that's food. These are yang foods. So we are currently living in cold climates. Cold is yin. So yin, you want to be putting yang in your inside. So that is things like chilies. Yes, they're not particularly good to eat all the time because they cause leaky gut. But cayennes actually fix leaky gut because they are a capsicum, not a specific chili. Cayennes have loads of other benefits that you can look at as well when you go into herbology. We're not going to go too much into that. But other yang foods are things that grow right towards the end of the autumn, and then some things that you grow through winter as well, like cabbages and all that kind of stuff. But predominantly meat and eggs and things you can source all the way through, or you can source at Hunter's Moon, September, October, and cure and preserve. I was vegan from 2020 through to 2024, or possibly even half through 2025. And then before that, I was veggie for like 12, 13 years. Veggie was fine, but vegan was a step too far for me. And veganism only really works in the UK because of refrigeration and freezing. So how do vegans make whole proteins? You take rice, you take some kind of whole bean or legume, and that makes a whole protein, almost. And then how do they source fats? Coconut oil, avocado oil, all that kind of stuff. None of that grows in this country. The beans, one or two maybe, but you're looking at things like peas and potentially peanuts. But you can look at all the things like dal and lentils and grain, all that kind of stuff. They do not grow in this country. They are not native, and it's not in line with the seasons. Okay, so anyway, looking at eating seasonally is something that can really benefit. And when you look at yin foods and yang foods, so in the summer, we'll look at what actually does grow in the summer. So in the summer times of the UK, yes, that is when all the fruit comes out. The summertime is hot, it's yang. Nature is already producing yin fruits. Yeah, the winter time is yin. Nature is not producing yin fruits, it's producing yang foods. So your pumpkins, your root vegetables, your potatoes to an extent. Potatoes are actually neutral, but your sweet potatoes are yang. Your butternut squash and pumpkin, winter squashes, all that kind of stuff, they are all yang. Meat is generally very yang. Some are more yin, like pork, which is not particularly great meat anyway. And the way pigs are treated in slaughterhouses is just ridiculous. Unless you really go for local as you can, small holdings, etc., and vet everything from through to the slaughterhouse. So that is a brief kind of way of putting it in that sense. So eating seasonally, because nature provides what you need that is relative to what is going on. In winter, yes, we would actually naturally be fasting. So in spring, we might be eating more sort of grains and stuff because that's the stuff that's coming out earlier. In summer, we're eating a lot more fruits, and that's a really good way of us packing on that kind of extra levy of weight for us to see us through. And then into autumn, then we're getting more of the yang vegetables because it's starting to get a little bit more yin, and then those carry us through into winter. And at Hunter's Moon, obviously September, we are then going and we would be effectively naturally culling deer and everything else that is local, because the fawns have grown. They are now able to keep themselves and everything else. They are then the next ones for the next year, and then the adults, some of the adults will be picked off, particularly the older ones, which may have not even seen it through the winter anyway because of being old. And then that would be then the cured and stored meat that would see us through the winter. And at some point, there would be a point where there would be very little scarce food, and we would have a natural fasting time. We would have built all those stores. We wouldn't have had any toxins on our body through sugars and everything else. So fasting is a lot easier if you're not filling yourself and you're not creating a detox at the beginning of that. Yeah. So naturally going through to that, and that is the cycle. That is what we should be following in the UK. Even though we have fridges and freezers, yes, you can dabble, and every now and then, okay, yeah, I fancy like a crumble or some kind of this, that, and that. But if you're constantly under this notion of like fruit is good for you all the time, all the way through the year, absolute freaking nonsense. So, living with the seasons, that's a nice, easy, quick one to put in there. Let's cover very quickly the yin and yang thing. So, yin foods and yang foods, if you look at the way the plant grows, so particularly with meats, if it's a meat that's quite sweet, that's yin. So that's pork, that's duck. If it's a meat that's quite almost like has a slight bitterness, so lamb is an absolute classic. Beef, red meats, generally they're more yang. Yeah, that's easy. With plants, if it grows towards the sun, it is yin because it's seeking out yang. If it grows into the ground, more the root vegetables or the tubers like potatoes, sweet potatoes, etc., they are generally more naturally yang, and they are seeking out yin. They are seeking out the cold and the wet of the soil. Yeah. There are some exceptions, so like, and they generally tend to be neutral in that sense. So it's growing towards the sun, it's green, generally that's yin. Rosemary is an exception, that is yang, and it's quite an oily thing, etc., that kind of thing. There are very few yang plants. There's very, very few yang fruits. Lychees are one of them. But root vegetables, most of them are yang or neutral. Carrots are neutral. So that's a nice easy one. You can kind of balance out that way. If you really want to look, if you want to have a little bit more diversity into things, and you know that obviously we're in winter, it's yin time, I should be focusing more on yang foods. You can look at that way if you still want to source that which isn't growing locally but is still yang that way. You can do it that way. Okay, that's it. We are now 17 minutes in. That is everything for today. But yes, living with the seasons and the astronomy side of thing, obviously it will come in a little bit more as we go through these day by day, and then obviously the next full moon will be another Chinese astronomy, astrology affiliation. I will leave it there. I will see you tomorrow, and tomorrow's title is all about inclusion.